Here are the 5 books I'd recommend you read this year. Weird flex, but I've read over 300 in the nonfiction space. Finances, relationships, self-improvement, self-healing. There's a lot of books out there that kind of say the same thing, you know what I mean? So I think if you take this list, read them this year, it's gonna give you some paradigm shifts that will stick with you. Book number 1. Take 5 seconds and read the list of words in front of you now. Got it? We good? Okay. Now, which of these words was not on the list? For like most, it's obvious. Gasoline. But there's another word that also wasn't on the list. That one, sleep. If you don't believe me, rewind 5 seconds and look at the list. You knew gasoline wasn't on the list because it was so out of place, but you didn't catch sleep because it fit in. That example explains selective focus and a bit of the flaws that are wired into our neuroscience, behaviorism, call it whatever you want. We're learning a lot about it in the last 20, 30 years. In fact, the first book I recommend, Stumbling on Happiness, goes over just that. My favorite idea from the book is what makes you unique. It's our ability to think about the future. It seems so everyday to you because you can do it, but your ability to daydream, to manifest, to set goals, to predict, to worry, anxiety, right? That's living in the future, seeing things going wrong, is super unique to the human race. It's estimated around 12% of all your thoughts throughout the day are related to the future. Now, a lot of us are using that prediction machine to try and predict what will make us happy. Well, if I get a certain amount of money, I'll be set. If I just had more experience or the house or the job, then things will be happy one day. So we're always trying to predict what will make us happy. But what Dan Gilbert says in this book so brilliantly, we don't actually know. It's called Stumbling on Happiness, but I think it should be called Humbling Happiness, because it makes you realize how little you actually know. In going over a lot of the cognitive biases and how our decision making is flawed and how we have overconfidence about our predictions of the future, it really does humble you to another side of what it means to be human. Book number 2. What do billionaires, hippies, FBI raids, and meditation all have in common? They're in this book, The Surrender Experiment, Michael Singer. Michael Singer's got a crazy story. Literally was just this hippie who wanted to meditate in his van in Mexico and be left the heck alone. And slowly, as his story unravels, he gets a carpentry job. And then he gets really good, and then he has this company. And then they start building churches and houses and construction, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then he gets into computing, and that gets bigger. And eventually he finds himself, I don't want to spoil too much here, being the CEO of this multi-billion-dollar company. Crazy story, crazy book. And why I'm telling you this and why I recommend it so hard is a couple of reasons. The first is that it illustrates just that. What does it mean to let go? Because here's a guy who took the polar opposite approach that a lot of the West teaches with self-improvement. Set goals, work your face off, hustle and grind, sacrifice the best years of your life for a future outcome. But then there's the whole more esoteric Eastern approach, which is just be in the present moment. Allow things to come to you. Don't be too attached. Let the universe, if you believe this, let the universe unfold with you and guide you. Have intentions, but don't force things. Because to the degree you force things, it's like having a breeze on a hot summer day flowing through your house. You want it to last forever. You shut all the doors and all the windows and it kills the breeze of what you love. That's the approach that this book talks about. And so this book really turned my beliefs in my 20s on my head, because I had been operating, if you know my story, from that force energy for such a long time. That was all I knew. And then as soon as I got into my 30s, I moved to Arizona. I started experimenting with some more of this letting go Eastern approach to things. And I got a whole new batch of results. And neither is better. I do believe you need both. This book really emphasizes what it looks like to let go, to tap into that new camp. The last note on this, I would highly recommend you get the Audible version because he's reading it. And it feels like a mini course or a deep dive that's 10 hours long. I put that on. I went on a lot of walks. I think I finished it in a week throughout just walking up and down my golf course. Get your 10,000 steps in and learn what it means to let go. Okay, this next book, bit of a funny story. It was a book I read in college and it blew my mind. You know when someone connects the dots of sporadic areas in your mind and it feels like, oh, I understand this now, like, yes. Well, this book did it for me in relationships. I started being like, well, everyone needs this book. You get a copy, you get a copy, you get a copy. So I was giving them out to like my friends, my family, to people I didn't really even know that well because it helped me so much. And one of the people I gave it to, dude, it was a good book, but there were some chapters at the end, like, are you sure you really liked it? Because it talked about ejaculating up the spine. And I was like, dude, that was my favorite chapter. I promise to never do that again. This book, Way of the Superior Man. Superior man doesn't mean above others. It doesn't mean above women. It means the most superior version of yourself. Even man is a bit of a misleading word because it talks about masculine and feminine energies, which every single person has. There's men with a very strong feminine energy and a very weaker masculine energy. And there's women with a very strong masculine energy and a very weak feminine energy. In general, what this book talks about is you have both. Men typically have a very strong masculine, so they operate with a certain set of parameters, rules, thoughts, and women see things through the feminine energy, which is a very different worldview. The way to understand your woman is not necessarily through the masculine frame. That's gonna cause a lot of issues, problems, and it's like you're speaking English and they're speaking Chinese. You're speaking English and they're speaking a different language, you don't even understand it. I love this book because it goes beyond just 60-second TikTok or YouTube shorts of this whole like men versus women conversation. Feels like every single video on my feed is just men do this and it sucks. Women do this and it sucks. We're better. No, we're better. You don't understand us. No, you don't understand us. With the occasional how to tell if your partner's a narcissist. And they give you like 5 things that are so generic. Anyone is a narcissist. So it plants it in your mind that, oh, I've dated narcissistic men. I've dated narcissistic women. It's just toxic. And then the next video will be like, women's standards of men are too high. The next video will be like, don't settle for a low quality man. Dude, can we stop fighting for 2 seconds? Can we try to understand and have a good conversation about this without just trying to go viral and get views as the currency? It's very divisive. And I think that it comes from a very jaded place, and rightfully so. Like, relationships cause so much pain if they don't go right. And even if they're going right, there's lots of pain wrapped up in them. There's a huge source of pleasure too. Some of the most pleasure you'll get in your life comes from relationships, and also the other side of the coin, so much of the pain comes from relationships. A lot of people internalize that, they get jaded, and they fall into these extreme echo chambers of people telling them what they want to hear. And I think the one thing we want on both sides is for us to make a list of who we want, and then to become that list. Literally writing down like 10 things you want in a partner, and be that. I say it in every video, but stop trying to look for the right person and start focusing on becoming the right person. And I love that frame, and that's why I'm such a fan of this self-improvement and self-healing work and what we talk about here on this channel, and why, you know, you're watching these videos. I have so much respect for you, because that is some of the best relationship advice out there, is to be the best version of yourself, because that's who you're gonna attract. Tens attract tens. When you raise yourself up to a level 10 person emotionally, spiritually, financially, watch that person start to come into your life that's way better. All right, relationship talk over. Book number 4. We talked about love, we talked about happiness. Let's talk about money. Some moolah, baby. This book is all about Bitcoin and reading charts. Here's a book on tax evasion. In all seriousness, what makes someone good with money? You might be tempted to say having a lot of money, or having a high-paying job so you have money to invest. Generational wealth. Not denying that those can help, but those play a smaller role than you think. The biggest role that this book argues in your financial future, how you behave. This book got a ton of praise when it came out. It was a breath of fresh air in the finance space, and I read a lot of financial books, and I love that area a lot. A lot of the books just are very logical, like, oh, well, you have $100, you need 7% here, 10% here, 30% is yours, and 50, you know. It's just like, it's a spreadsheet download. There's no emotion or stories behind it, and so I think this book is very easy to digest, very easy to read. It's fun to read, and there were some points that stuck with me. What really stuck with me, and my favorite idea, is this story right here. It's on Ronald James Reed. This guy was a janitor, lived in Vermont. He was the first of his family to graduate, not college, not PhD, but high school. In 2014, he passed away. You're reading his tombstone. His obituary said Ronald James Reed was a gas station attendant, a philanthropist, and an investor. 3 things that don't seem to go together. Most people would judge him and say, what, is homeboy investing his $8 an hour somewhere? Guess how much he was worth when he died? At the age of 92. A couple $100,000? No way that dude's worth $1 million. No way. Very private guy, lived very humbly, so everyone was shocked, just like you and me. He was worth over $8 million. Left it to his kids in his local hospital. Pretty impressive. Most people are like, what was his secret? How many lotteries did he win? How many crypto shit coins did he get in on the ground floor and pump and dump? The answer was super boring, but again, it's all about behaviorism. He invested in blue chip stocks, publicly traded companies, he held them, and he waited for decades. About as boring as you can get. No trust funds, no generational wealth, no high-paying job, literally the same resources that every single person has access to. A good example of behaviorism and where we have misplaced priorities, lottery tickets. You know, the US spends more on the lottery than books, movies, video games combined. The sad part is that it's mostly lower class people in America who buy them. Ronald James Reed type, his camp. You look at the data, the lower the income class in general, the more money they'll spend on lottery, with the average being about $412 a year per household. Now, when also surveyed, they said that 40% of Americans can't even come up with an emergency fund of $400 in the case of an emergency. And it's sad because what that says with the behaviorism and how we're operating with money is that we're blowing a safety net. We'd rather not have an emergency net so we can take the behavior of a 1 in smallest fractional chance that we're gonna hit big on $1 million. Yes, there's education to it. Yes, there's other factors, but the biggest underlier is behavior. So if you can learn and educate yourself on the behaviors, on the psychology of money, guess what? You're gonna be more amped to take those actions. Like Ronald James Reed, who grew up in that camp that was a lot of ticket camp, educated himself and started investing in blue chip stocks, was worth over $8 million when he died at 92. The next book was super dense, super impactful. I loved it, but it's on a heavy subject. The heaviest one you can write about, trauma. And that's a buzzword, I think, in the last couple of years that has gotten talked about more and more, which is a positive. One of the shadow sides of it is that everyone experiences trauma differently. And some people say that they got cut off in traffic and it was traumatic. I have so much trauma with Uber Eats. Sometimes I order it and they don't come. The word trauma has taken a different meaning in pop culture. But on the other side, trauma is different for everyone. The worst thing you've been through is the most traumatic thing you've been through. A book like this, The Body Keeps the Score, which is all about trauma. And it's written by someone super qualified who has 30 plus years experience in this industry, working with traumas, studying traumas, the effects on your body, your mental, emotional, physical state. Absolutely fantastic and necessary to read. Favorite big idea from it: your issues are stored in your tissues. Assault victims who, even if someone gets close and tries to touch them, they have a physiological response. They withdraw. Maybe you got in a bad car accident, and when you're in a car, you can feel the physiological stress of like tensing up, like, oh, they're gonna hit me again. You get nervous before a presentation, you physiologically start to sweat profusely. Maybe you pit out, maybe your stomach gets in knots. So much of trauma is stored in your body. It's a physiological response. In my 20s, one thing that I learned through Osho, yes, he was a cult leader. He had some great ideas besides the cult. He had this thing called a dynamic meditation. It was a series of bioenergetics, but also this meditation that wasn't just sitting. It was expressive. So you do like 4 or 5 of these movements. One was like jumping up and down, like, oh, oh, oh. Another was a cathartic release. You go as crazy as you can for a set period of time. And I would just take the drums and go as hard as I can. I wouldn't even worry about playing things right. And it was a form of this dynamic meditation. It didn't matter how stressed I was, how much in a low vibe I was, how much BS had happened in my life, what I was going through. I would go in there, I would do a dynamic meditation, and I would feel just complete relief by the end. You're good. Things are gonna be okay. Got that off your chest. That's an example of using your physiology to change your state. Even something as simple as just going on a run, going on a walk. I mean, when you're back from that, don't you handle stress a little differently? Issues are in your tissues. We're not meant to just sit hunched over for 10, 12, 14 hours a day. Some people are like, oh, I have so much anxiety and I feel depressed. And then you look at their lifestyle and it's like, well, do you exercise? No. Well, when was the last time you like got out and moved and stretched and went on a run? I don't know. I don't really work out. I don't got energy for it. And that was something I realized, is that you don't need energy to work out. You get energy from working out, from movement. Flipping that from, oh, I don't have energy to work out, to no, I get energy through working out. And the times I don't feel like it, as soon as I'm done, I never regret doing it and I feel 10 times better. If you're someone who likes reading books, you like big ideas, videos like this, you get things from them, I'll link up right here a perfect follow-up video. This is where I did a crazy challenge reading 7 books in 7 days, but I summarize and give you a big idea from each throughout the days. I personally think it's a fun video. You can go watch that now, and I'll see you there.